Hello and welcome or welcome back to Talking About Cross Stitch with me. I'm Karen, the Stitching Owl. And I've noticed that I've been gradually increasing in subscribers, so I thought I would just take a moment to briefly tell you a little bit about me. I come from London, Ontario, Canada. Yes, it's the same London, Ontario that is the home of Evertote. I do spend a fair amount of time awake in the middle of the night, and in order to pass the time in a quiet way, I watch Flosstube and I stitch. Therefore, because I'm awake at the same time as the owls, I am the Stitching Owl. Also, it allows people who are struggling with my last name to know how to say it, even though it's not a difficult last name. Rowell is often said wrong, so if it rhymes with owl, everybody seems to get it out a little bit more easily. I find it interesting that Powell is not misspoken, but Rowell often is, but that's just the way it is. I have been retired for less than a year. I had a full-time private piano studio, and I also worked for the Royal Conservatory of Music in Toronto as an examiner. I had time both in the piano area and the theory area, and found it very inspiring to be amongst other musicians who could think music as quickly as I could. I credit my experience with the Royal Conservatory with much of my private success because the people around me helped me to grow. I do have 3 children, all above the age of 20, and a wonderful husband who has taught me to laugh even in the moments when I'm not thinking I can laugh. That is truly a gift that he has given me. We also have an almost 16-year-old dog by the name of Lola that every so often you will see coming in and out of the corner of the screen. She's not so much a lap dog, therefore you won't often find her in my arms. But you might hear her barking at the window to let everybody around know that she is watching carefully. I stitch a lot and I do quilt. When I stitch, I change projects often during the day, and as such, almost every video is a mini whip parade as you work through between 12 and 18 projects that I have covered in the 2 weeks. But this time it is 3 weeks since my last video because there was 5 Sundays in March. Therefore, there was quite a few stitches put in. Now let's talk about the weather. I am doing the temperature stitches by Sarah, Stitchin Mommy. So what we are doing is we are taking note of the temperature each day. I myself am recording what the temperature is at 12 noon where I live. And then I have created my own color scheme. Sarah has provided a number of different color schemes depending on where you are in the world. I happen to be in an area with a fairly wide range of temperatures. So what I did was I went through my sulky 12-weight threads and assigned a color per degree from about -20, -22, up to about +30, 32. And as such, I've got quite a range of colors in here, and 0 is represented with pure white. Now, March we were doing the diamond eyelet. This is a pattern where we spend time learning our specialty stitches, and this one will actually become a reference for me for future projects that have specialty stitches. Now, you're going to notice this is April 6th, but I haven't started April yet. I do have January, February, and here we have March. And if I hold it up, you can see everything from a dark green to white to gray in the freezing, to green, which was up at +10. So we have quite a wide range. We experienced about -8 up to 17 degrees, and I am in Celsius here in Canada. Now you can see this particular chart also being stitched by Sheila of Mrs. Stitches and Amy of Renewing Stitches. Amy's in Texas, so her colors are different. Now Sheila is Canadian, but she's on the East Coast, and being that close to the water, her temperatures are different too, so it's always interesting. And if you just want to really see something completely different, Adelaide in either New Zealand, I think she's in Australia. She's of course in the other hemisphere and is getting out of summer and starting towards autumn. So it's really neat to actually see people stitching the temperature charts in the different areas of the world. Now, send a smile. I have a program within my Flosstube channel where I like to send out a card with a little ornament as a way of making people smile, and I tend to send them all over the world. Now, I have many, many friends who are in the United States, and we are now experiencing a few problems at the border with some of these envelopes 6 and 7 weeks later being returned to the sender without explanation. So Carolyn Zook of Zook Stitches and I are just trying to figure out how this can play out and whether the Flosstubers have to be careful about Canada to US and vice versa for the next little while as we sort out our political challenges. So I have sent out a test envelope, and I will trust that Carolyn will let me know if and when it arrives, and I will let her know if it arrives back with me. So I am hoping that it gets there, but we will see. Now, I did refer to politics. If you would like a more enlightened and thorough view of the political things that are going on in the United States, I'm going to refer you to the Notorious Needle channel, who they discuss politics in a really enlightened way and articulate way. But as of this point, I'm going to let others discuss the politics, and I'm going to return to just talking about stitching because my videos seem to be an hour long even when I talk just stitching. Now, I'd like to say congratulations to Lee of Stick Strings and Other Things, who has finished her, radiation treatments for her cancer. So all of us are now wishing you recovered energy and focus, Lee, as you work through these next few weeks. And we hope that the radiation worked and that you are with us for a very long time. In the past 2 weeks, I have uploaded 2 videos. One Flosstube Extra was, I believe it was about an 11 minutes long chat about beading and what colors I use, what to bead with, and whether I use a single cross or a full cross. These are all things that if you haven't done a lot of beading, I invite you to check out my video and see whether there's anything helpful that I have to say. My other video was the wrap-up video for Canada Swaps 2. You'll notice I've got my Canada Swaps t-shirt under here. And indeed, I might have to record this video in more than one section because my Canada Chats session online will be coming up, well, in about an hour, and I need to be able to send out all of the invitations appropriately. So I'm going to get as far as I can and just keep my eye on the clock. So the wrap-up video for Canada Swaps 2 showed each of the fully finished items that I was given a picture of, and so far nobody has alerted me that there was errors in my video, so fingers crossed. And I hope that you will consider looking at this video for potential inspiration for how to fully finish a small in preparation for sharing, for instance, at a retreat or generalized gifting. I am very, very pleased that more than 35 people took part in my swap and that it appears that Canada Post did its work and everybody has received their small. Either that or somebody just hasn't let me know yet. I do like to highlight other floss tubers and will continue to do shout outs. Instead of making a long list in one area, I will pepper them throughout my video, and I of course will list these as links in my description box below so that you can check out new presenters and give them a like and a subscribe to lift their numbers and their spirits. Did anyone else get caught by Andrew the Runner Stitcher's video this week? He uploaded and came on and gave a wonderful opening, and I'm not going to tell you what happened next. If you haven't seen it, I want you to go watch. But I love that moment. Thank you, Andrew. My first shout out for Stitch It Pink. Amy has 1 or 2 videos completed now, and of course, she does love pink, but she also loves fabric flare to stitch on, Ada cloth, Brenda Gervais, and those Stacy Nash animal smalls. So there's lots to love with her videos. I hope you'll give her a check. My March summary. Well, March had 31 days, and that gave me lots of time for stitching. There was a small interruption in the middle of the month when I had a stomach virus and actually had a day and a half with 0 stitching, and then the rest of that half day with moderate stitching. So I did have 2 days in a row where nothing was put into my full coverage, which is quite unusual for me. But for a while, even picking up a needle, it just felt like it was heavy. So my best day of stitching in March, I put in 2,164 stitches. Now that was a day where I did not have any family meetings. It wasn't my day to care for my mother, and there just wasn't a lot of interruptions. So I sat still and I stitched. Through all of March, my total amount of stitches was 40,974, and I think that just might be my best month to date, certainly since I started counting, for sure. I had 26 items on my WIP list and finished 8 of those in March. So that put me below 20, so I could start some more things, of course. Now, I did have, just as an aside, challenges with retrieving information from the events button on my Facebook app, as in it for 6 weeks has told me that I cannot retrieve that information. Because of this, I've stepped back from doing Springo and I'm letting other people do this. So this is going to be a normal floss tube, not a Springo floss tube. Now, let's look at some fully finished items. There were a number of days this month where my focus also was on fully finishing, in part because my daughter was going, I've got some birthdays coming up that those stitches were for, Mom. So I'm going to insert a video here to show a couple of things that she's already gifted to happy receivers. Good morning. It is early on March the 20th, but I have been busy with fully finishing a couple of items and they're going out today, so I wanted to record a short video. So these are items that my daughter had stitched, and the birthdays they are being stitched for are this month. So the last time we were together, you had an opportunity, okay, it's blowing out, there we go, to see this one. I have it on a styrofoam block. I was able to purchase some bridle pins and use those for the feet. And then I, of course, have pink rickrack around the outside. So whoever she's giving this to doesn't have to worry about having wall space or putting a nail into the wall. This can go on an end table or a bookcase, which that is ideal. And I see that I've got a little thread here that I need to clip before I give it to her. So this pattern was part of a Witches sampler by Cute Patterns by Maria, and she stitched it on a 14 count pole stitches. Now recently she discovered that she rather liked a 16 count and that little bit smaller. So she did one from the same sampler on 16 count. So you can see that it is smaller. And this one I did as a hard ornament finish, and I put the beading around the edges. So both of these fabrics were a Pole Stitches specialty dye. But I think it turned out very nicely. And it's quite interesting that I was very careful when I set up how I was going to lace this. What I do is a running stitch, essentially 7 squares from the farthest point on each side. And because this is an asymmetrical piece, it isn't fully centered, but it works. So that running stitch is a great way of knowing whether or not you have your stitch centered when you are doing, even if you're using glue instead of the lacing. There's nothing as disappointing as actually getting finished and then looking at it and going, oh, it's just wrong. So I use polyester thread that's in a variety of wild colors left over from my mother's stash, because I'm not going to be using them in my sewing machine. They are perfect for making the running stitch for this centering. And the last fully finished item, I just realized that I did not check out which Etsy designer did this particular piece. My daughter was wanting to stitch something for a friend who loves horses. So she did a silhouette, and I was initially thinking of doing this as a flat fold, but it needed to have a bigger piece of board on the inside, so I cut down essentially some framing board instead of using comic book board, which wasn't going to be large enough. And then I sewed black rickrack so that it would peek up here and could be a hanger. And then on the back, I blanket stitched all the way around black felt so it can lay flush against a wall. Or if they have an easel, this top hanger can just lie down on the back and it can fit in an easel. Or, as Laura of Stitching by the Shore says, it could be a leaner on a bookshelf, whatever the young lady decides to do. So there are my fully finishes for March the 20th. And this is a fully finished item. Now this is a tiny modernist stitch from her book that you can get on Amazon. It's called Home Sweet Home, and it's got a lot of stitches to do with home. And of course, this is the home of the bees. Now, when I told my daughter that I had fully finished this one, she was excited because this is one she wants on her own wall, and she's looking forward to it. So this was a matter of, there's about 5 or 6 layers of quilt mat in here to puff this up. It's quite poofy. I beat it around the edge, and I have a piece of felt that I blanket stitched to the back, and ta-da, it's done. Also for my daughter, Little Witch Flying. Now this one is going to need to go in the mail, and we have to make sure it arrives without this frame being broken. So this is a Cute Patterns by Maria on Etsy Pattern. It is one that my daughter found. There was a lot of back stitching in it, but she was really good and she kept at it. And she did realize at the end how effective, like look at the eyelashes and just the contouring and the hair. She now is embracing the back stitch and is not worried if I say, oh, you're picking a pattern that has back stitch. She says, it's okay, Mom. I know that it works. Now, also for fully finishing, I did some for myself. So this is A Little Owl's Night. It is a pattern by Jen's Fiber Web. She has put this out as a freebie, so you can certainly get in contact with her for this stitch. I stitched this on a 40 count Verdal with 1 strand of DMC over 2. Some of the colors are called for and others I shaded slightly differently, and you can tell that I beat it around the edge in the same color that the moonflower was, just to be cohesive there. And on the back, I've got some blue fabric that is, of course, left over from my quilting collection. Now, on New Year's Eve, going into 2025, I took part in Sandy's, just writing down her name, 12 by 12 marathon Zoom, where she had a Zoom room open for 15 hours for us to start something every hour or not. We could just stitch, we could chat. Sandy is so lovely, and I do hope that if you are feeling alone in your stitching, that you will reach out to me to get the link to Sandy's chat, or just reach out to me and I will chat with you personally if you are more of a one-on-one person. So I am doing, hang on. This is the Patchwork calendar, which is a pattern that was gifted to me by Samantha the Huga Stitcher. And in March, I stitched the March patch and I fully finished it. Now around the edge of this one, I have clear crystals with just a few greens to anchor it, just enough that it is cohesive. So I stitched this, my patchwork calendar for Monochromatic Monday, and that I'm stitching with Laura, Stitching by the Shore, Beth the Steadfast Stitcher, and Oh, there's Lola. Okay, there's one more, and I'll think of it later when another one of these comes up. So this was fully finished. Now on my Whipgo is all actually starts, and it's to create 25 new ornaments in 2025. I am doing this with Amy of Renewing Stitches and Sarah the Rocking Chair Stitcher. Now my Whipgo board looks like this. So you can see I've got two that have an X, a plus, and a yellow highlight. So that means, so an X means it started, a plus means the stitch has finished the stitching, and the highlight means I have fully finished it. So I've only fully finished 2 of the 6 so far. And this was one of my February Whipgos, Shannon Christine Kiss Me. So I stitched this with CXC thread, and I did do 2 strands on a 32 count vintage country mocha. But I must say, I think I only needed to use 1. But once I'd started, I decided I was going to stick with it and be consistent. And again, because it was for St. Patrick's Day, there is dark green and light green in the beading and green on the back. Okay, now my next shout out is Katie Kearney. She has 121 videos. And yet it was the first time she had shown in my feed. I'm just astounded when that happens and don't fully understand the algorithms of YouTube. So Katie stitches a lot and shows as many projects as I do on each of her videos. And she also likes to make music, although she's a singer, whereas I play piano. But I hope you'll give Katie a peek. And one more shout out at this point is for Stitchin with Griffin. 30 videos, but it looks like, again, the algorithms haven't shown Stitchin with Griffin to many people. Billy, and that's a she, Billy, explores large stitches. Sometimes she loves the vibrant colors, and sometimes she likes things that are more muted and subdued. So there is absolutely fantastic variety in her presentation. So I hope that we can boost her subscriber numbers a bit. Now, I mentioned Whipgo a moment ago, and on my Whipgo board, I have been more generalized than many people in that in each square I put a designer. And this month for April, the first designer that came up was Mrs. AZ Family Zoo. And the second designer was Kuri Batkuri. Now, I do not know if I'm saying that right. As a matter of fact, I'm sure I'm not, because she's Italian. And if I think about all of the Italian I teach my students, that would not be the pronunciation. But that seems to be how Flosstubers say her name. So, Kuri Batkuri has a shop on Etsy. On the shop, it says that you are ordering paper patterns, but that you can get PDFs on request. So I thought, well, let's try this. And I messaged her through the shop and said, hi, I would like to put in an order for one of your patterns today, but I do not want a physical copy. I live in Canada. I would like a PDF copy. I was astonished that she responded in about 3 minutes in an email saying, cool, order it and I'll make it work. So I put in my order for Spring Angels. So of course, these are going to be ornaments and you will see one next time. I'm going to keep it a secret for now. So she, again, about 3 minutes after that, sent me the PDF and a couple minutes after that, the postage that would be charged as part of the PayPal transfer was reimbursed. Carolina was amazing to work with. I love her patterns and have many of them hearted on Etsy, and now I know I'll just reach out and she'll make it work. So I hope you'll take a peek and know that you can reach out too. Okay, so that's that page. The magazine monthly cross stitch challenge theme is growth. For me, I'm thinking that later on you will see that I've got many things with growth. As a matter of fact, I've got a fully finished item that exemplifies growth that I forgot to show you a moment ago. I fully finished my butterflies, fox and butterflies of Pigeon Coop's designs. And of course, a fox grows, butterflies grow from a caterpillar, and trees grow. So my fox and butterflies can be an example of growth. Now, we had an unfortunate but fortunate incident recently in that my youngest went into the hall closet to get something and came racing out saying, "The shelves have collapsed." Well, it was really the top shelf, and I can cheerfully say, no, it was not my material or my patterns. It was all my husband's running tops. He has done many, many races, and as such, at the end of every race, he gets a medal and a top, and sometimes they give him more swag. And well, the cupboard was actually created with the shelving when we moved in the early 1980s by my father. So it stood the test of time well, so I would have said probably 35 years those were in place. So it was unfortunate that we had to empty out that. But we also had to empty out the shelf below because it was full of the frames that I had inherited as people closed down parents' apartments. If there's frames of children, grandchildren that are not going to be used when they go to a long-term facility, people tend to give me these frames. And so we discovered that none of the glass had been broken and none of the frames had been broken, which is delightful. And now the fortunate thing is I'm looking at these going, aha, this is going to be my impetus for over the next few weeks, figuring out what of my finished items can fit into each of these frames, and if I don't have something, to pick out a pattern and stitch it on a stitch count that will make it fit. So this is a trick that Kim uses, Contented Needleworker Kim, because there are times that she'll actually choose a specific area of a stitch so that it can fit nicely into a frame, or she'll pick a smaller or a larger count. And I'm going to take that inspiration, Kim, and use it myself. Laura has I Spy challenges. So the acrostic for the Magazine Monthly Acrostic Challenge, Apricot, and the I Spy challenges, I'm just going to mention those as I move through my different elements. Okay, so now we come to finishes, and my first finish is actually Whipgo. This is We Be Stitchin'. This is a pattern by Allison of the Family Zoo Etsy shop. And this is indeed a quick stitch. She has said on her own Flosstubes, I hope you'll check her out, that her stitches are small and meant to move along quickly so that you can gift them with ease. So this did now, I did this on a 32 count aqua even weave, might be even vintage aqua. And I used 12 weight sulky thread, so she was inspiring my color choices, but these do not match absolutely exactly. Now this one I used for the I Spy challenge, something silly, because the bees in my backyard, I've never seen cross stitching, but this bee has a cross stitch hoop right there. Now this pattern she provides you with either with or without putting in the words we be stitching, and as most of you know, I often take out the words. My next finish is the Floral Folk Mandala by Mama Piggy X Stitch on Etsy. If you remember, a month or so ago, I received an email asking if she could gift me one of her patterns so that I could chat about her on my Flosstube. And I said, sure, that would be fine. And she delightfully just let me pick one. And so I thought, let's pick something springy. And so I picked this folk mandala, which I call a floral mandala. And we can sort of see that there are tulips in here. I'm stitching this on a 40 count verdal, white verdal, with a 1 strand of DMC over 2. It was an easy stitch for me. The shading is effective, but you're using less than 10 colors of DMC to get this to come out this beautifully. And of course I could turn it around and it would still all be equal. So that does mean that for me, I did put, well, look at that. Technically speaking, I'm holding it upside down. So when I have something like this, I always put a stitch up in my left-hand corner so that I know which way to hold it up so I get all my X's going the correct way. Now there are over 100 different patterns in different styles on Mama Piggy X Stitch. So I hope you'll give her a peek and see if there's something that would be interesting to you to stitch. And thank you so much for that free pattern. Now, I also finished Rockin' Robin. It is a Love Poppet design, and here we have it. It is such a delight. And again, she does this with not that many different colors of floss. This is DMC, and I'm on a 36 count linen that I believe I purchased from Patty Break. There we go. And at Stitch North, I used 1 strand of DMC. I love the shading into the pattern in the crest. Is very similar to the Pigeon Coop's use of designs on the fur of animals. This was such an easy and joyful stitch. Now, Love Poppet Designs is part of the Let's Celebrate British Designers that Sally of Flossie Sews and Grows is doing. So, of course, it's 2 Sallys because Sally Stitches, who's also got a Flosstube, was also doing this, and I believe they were both done ahead of me. But that's okay. I am thrilled with this and debating how I'm going to fully finish it, hopefully for our next time together. And I also, the last time we were together, I showed you this spring ornaments of It's So Emma that I am stitching as part of a hashtag Ornament Sal with Allison of Mrs. AZ Family Zoo. So I did 2 of these yesterday afternoon. So we have a bunny butt and a chicken and egg. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these into lollipops, but I want to stitch some more and then do a series of lollipops all at once while I'm in the mood for doing that particular finishing. And I have been experimenting with my youngest to get the camera set up correct, and we think that we have the camera on my phone sorted out so that you can see my hands as I demonstrate my beading and my finishing. Now again, I used sulky thread on the vintage aqua 32 count even weave. Okay, and that is it for my finishes. Now I'm going to do a couple more shout outs. Barb Olivieri is So She Sews and Quilts. She's got 13 videos that are mostly cross stitch with some quilting. And what she does is she starts with her cross stitch and ends with the quilting, so that if quilting isn't your jam, it's okay. You can just stop when she's finished talking about her cross stitching. She has a lovely flow to her chatting, so let's help her gain some subscribers. And Vermont Stitchico has 7 videos, and it's growing because Chelsea is videoing every week. She's a stitcher and she's a designer with an Etsy shop, and she wanted to let us know with all certainty that she uses no AI in order to make her patterns. They are from her imagination, and that she sketches first and then makes it into stitching, and feels that her stitching is actually even better than her sketching. She's got a gently cheerful voice. Now for works in progress, we're going back to my patchwork calendar because I did start April, and I'm doing these on a 25 count even weave, 1 full X over 1, and this is the straight way up. So April is in a beautiful shade of mauve, and it is Thistle by Roxy Floss Co. For those people who like a little bit of variegation but not a lot, this is your purple, because it's purple into bluey violet, but it doesn't stripe, but it does vary just that hint. Now in the mock-up in the book, the owl forest is purple into green. So mine is not going to look exactly like theirs, but I'm okay with that because I am loving doing this. Now, I forgot to tell you that my Chicken Bunny Ornaments by It's So Emma is the eye for in apricot for my magazine acrostic. Now for my patchwork calendar, this is the P in apricot for the magazine acrostic, and the other stitcher for Monochromatic Monday is Nancy the Distortedly Stitcher. Nancy, I'm sorry. It was funny, I could picture your face and not remember your name. Now, my next one for my works in progress is Barred Owl by Mudpuppy Designs. Kenzie generously gifted this to me, possibly because of my name as the Stitching Owl. Now, she has an Etsy shop and she has been adding more patterns lately, and they are delightful. Now, she is fascinated by animals and particularly birds, so I envision stitching more birds in my future with Contented Needleworker Kim. Now, my owl is coming along nicely. I wanted to get his face fully done, and I just couldn't quite manage it, but we do have one eye and the beacon and a stick. Now, the stick is going to come out across here some more. I am stitching this with 2 strands of DMC on a 32 count even weave that is as a hand dyed bipole stitches that I bought at Stitch It Central. Now, here we have 11,218 stitches, which means I'm 77% done. My goal for today was to reach 75%, so I did it, and I am thrilled. And this is the O for owl, of course, and O is in apricot for the magazine monthly challenge. Now, I also used it for the I Spy challenge, shaped like a pretzel. And you're thinking, shaped like a pretzel? And I'm like, oh yeah, you can get pretzels in all sorts of shapes. And my husband likes to have the pretzel sticks to dip into hummus. So I thought that this stick had the nubbles on it, just like the nubbles of salt, because he loves the salt on his pretzels. So this is my I Spy shaped like a stick. And next is one you haven't seen in a little while. Aurora by Pigeon Coop Designs. Now this is one that I had had some frustrations with, in part because I had chosen to do 2 strands of DMC on an 18 instead of figuring out my either CXC or sulky threads where I could use 1 strand. So that was part of it, but it was also that I was using a book that wasn't staying open. So I had originally thought, this pattern is so blocky, I don't need to put it into PC Stitch and then Pattern Keeper, but I just broke down last week, did it, and it helped me to get going again. So here we are. Last time you saw it, it was the top part and maybe a little bit of the bottom. So I now have all the way across in the darkest purple and have been able to put away my 550. I've got a chunk of my 552 going, and I fully expect to be able to keep going with this. So this is 3,299 stitches for 76.5% complete. And of course, A is for Aurora and A is for apricot, so also worked in the magazine monthly challenge acrostic. And now I'm going to do one more before I break for my Canada chats and then come back to finish. I'm going to do Rowdy J by Pigeon Coop Designs. Now I've stitched this with some friends. Connie's finished hers. Mary of Mary's Stitching Corner has finished hers, and mine does not have a head. But it is well on the way, and I am stitching this on the same fabric that I did my Rockin' Robin on. So it's a 36 count linen, and I'm using 1 strand of DMC. I have 1,097 stitches, which means I am 65.7% complete. And this is the R for Rowdy, is the R in apricot for the magazine acrostic. So again, you can see how if I put these up together, these are 2 different designers, but they both use these shapes in the bodies of their birds and animals to create interest to the eye, and they both use a relatively small amount of DMC colors in order to create a very effective finish. So clearly, I'm having fun with my birds. Hello, if it seems like I am here in a new outfit, it is indeed a new day. When I started my video yesterday, I knew that I had a limited amount of time before I needed to start my Canada Chats meeting. And we had such a lovely time. We went a little bit past our normal 2 hours chatting, and I thought, you know, I'm going to wait till the morning to finish my video so that you have me fresh. So here we go. My next works in progress. I have joined the Boss Stitchers in stitching a Biscornu, and this was a sort of a challenge that they created on their channel, and I don't know whether they've never made a Biscornu before. I will tell you, it's actually not very difficult at all. Years ago, ahead of Jacobpalooza, I purchased a pattern from his website that had 8 Biscornu that when he does it monochromatic, but we have anything that we want to do with the coloration, we can. So I took the center of one of his to create this shape. Now, it is a work in progress because I have beading to go in here. His isn't beaded, but mine is. And then I need to decide how big I want to make my square around the outside. And then over here, I will make another square with exactly the same amount of X's. That is the absolutely essential element, because if you're out by a little bit, it doesn't work. And then, while many people will put a complete design on the bottom of the Biscornu, we tend to have one side up. So I put a pattern in the corners of my bottom because the corners will peek up in the final product, and then I will be ready to actually pop together this. But for right now, I just think this looks very springy, and I'm considering making another one in a different colorway but using the same pattern, although we'll see what happens. I have put this pattern into Pattern Keeper, and so it's quite easy to just erase your progress and start all over with a whole new set of colors. But I was stitching this on 32 count Vintage Stormy Night, which is an even weave, and as I do on my 32 count, I used 1 strand of sulky 12 weight thread. And next, I have a Cat at the Window stocking by Cross Stitch Kits Alla on Etsy. And I am stitching this on an Ecru 20 count Ada. My stockings they've always just been a full coverage, so I like to use Ada cloth just to make it that little bit quicker for the stitching, less apt to have like a 1 strand be potentially an issue. And now this time, because I'm using 20, this stocking will be smaller than the typical stocking, but this is more for looks. My son and daughter-in-law have a new apartment they're moving into, and it has a fireplace. Well, it's a fake fireplace, but it still has the facade. And so I thought, oh, let's create a stocking that is going to have the back look of a Siamese cat. They have adopted a Siamese cat from a rescue group. You can see this week that I got the ears in and the shape of the face and the moon with some clouds going by that he seems to be looking at. So with this one, I've got 4,939 stitches for 20.8%. That means for April, I'm still behind because I should really be at 6,000 stitches, but I'm closer to being on track than I was a month ago at the beginning of March. So I'm happy with my progress. Whenever I go out to stitch with my friends, I bring this particular one so that I get a few hours of stitching. Now up here, this went really quickly because it was just 1 or 2 colors of blue. And now that I'm doing the cat, it takes me longer and I have to concentrate a little bit more to ensure I haven't messed up. But I'm very pleased with that progress. And for the I Spy challenge, the cat reminds me of my middle child's pet, whose name is Dunkin, D-U-N-K-I-N, like the donuts in the States. And therefore, this is the I Spy, something like a pet. Now, my next whip is True North by the Rocking Chair Stitcher, who actually is the stitching porch on Etsy. So if you would like to check out Sarah's different designs, I'd encourage you to look at the stitching porch, and I will alert you to that in the description box below, because her Etsy shop isn't identical to her Flosstube name. Now Sarah's generously gifted me this pattern. And my goal is to stitch it gradually so that ultimately I finish it at Stitch North. But Stitch North is a month away, so I need to step it up a bit here so that my plan is to have all the white and red stitched by the end of this month, so that at Stitch North, I just have to take, I think it's like 9:38 for the pole, and it will only be probably 20 to 30 stitches that I need to put in before I can ring the bell. Now, here's where I am today. And yes, you can see that in the upper left-hand corner, I always put something for when I get started. And I've got this side all done and the center done. This is well on the way. And I'm starting into the words. Now, Sarah did a little adjustment to the words, and I realized I didn't put that into Pattern Keeper. So I'm going to be using the original charting of the words. So if you choose to download this, yours might be slightly different than mine, but I know I'm going to be happy with my end result. So I have 2,056 stitches here for 60.7%. I'm using 1 strand of CXC on a 32 Azure even weave. Because CXC is a bit fluffier than DMC, the 1 strand does give good coverage. You are not seeing the blue even through the white. Now, for the magazine monthly acrostic, it is the T in apricot for true in True North. And I'm just going to pop in a wee video because there is a mini rocking chair who seems to be interested in my videos and watches them. Probably not all the way through because he's still a little mini. But I asked Sarah whether he had any favorite pieces, so I thought I would pop one in just for him. And continuing on my works in progress, we have I'm working on 2 of the animals in The Year in the Woods by Cottage Garden Sampling. There's going to be some more animals added later on. I believe it might start in June, and I can picture wanting to do some of those. So I just decided I need to get at the patterns that I had not done. Now, I admit that at this point, I am still looking for the patterns to the beaver and the ferret. And I'll say, do any of you have those completed that you would be happy to share your stash with? Because that would be absolutely lovely. At the present time, my LNS doesn't have it, and the tariffs are now enacted. So to order them in, they will be more expensive than they would have been before. So if there's somebody that could share, that would be lovely. But if it doesn't happen, I'm still going to purchase. So I am working on the raccoon. And I'm doing this with Alyssa, who's on Flosstube, and I will of course pop her into the description box below. Now you'll see that I did make progress because I have part of a face. He's somewhat of a one-eyed Jack today, but he does have his eye in. We have his back fully in. Now you'll notice that I am not giving myself an awful lot of extra material in order to achieve framing, and that's because the intent is not to frame, but I need to have all of the animals done that I want to finish and do the fully finishing together, because that I've got something very specific that I'm not sure whether it'll work or not. So that will be much later. And I've discovered that the first 2 that I did, so that would be the fox and the swans, are not on the same fabric nor the same count as I have here, and I really like this, so I just might be restitching those 2. So I've got lots of stitchy joy ahead. So I am on a 36 count even weave, hand dyed by Rolanda, and I'm using 1 strand of called for DMC. My raccoon has 4,265 stitches for 58.45%. So I'm over halfway through this. When I flip to the bear, you'll see he's not quite as far. He's got 3,443 stitches for 42.57 stitches. Now in these, I actually am using the called for, including the Cottage Garden on these tended to put in 2 of the more used colors as a weak dye work that has a gentle variant. And I did end up purchasing those, even though I often just use straight DMC, and I'm enjoying these. I do like that the Weeks Dye Works have such subtle variation that you have a sense of movement in the fur, but you don't actually have noticeable stripes. So that is really, really nice. So those are my 2 Cottage Garden sampling stitches. Now, last time we were together, I had a very brief start on the Doreen Jones butterfly, because or maybe I didn't. This could be a start. With it being 3 weeks, I'm not even sure. So many Thursdays, I have a crew of people that I stitch with, that include Laura, Stitching by the Shore, Amy of Renewing Stitches, Mary of Mary Stitching Corner, Kim, Contented Needleworker Kim, and my friend Karen D. So collectively, we all decided we were going to do the full coverage butterfly It is a beautiful stitch because even though it's full coverage, it's got lots of areas that you could use a complete strand. There doesn't seem to be, so far, any confetti stitching. And you have the choice of either just doing this circle in close, and I'll pop up a picture of the final product up here. That's the mock-up. So you could make it into the square, or you could just do the circle. And I have not decided whether I'm doing the circle or the square. So I'm starting on the circle, seeing whether I like it, and if I want to add the corners at the end, I will. Now this is how far I've gotten, and I will say I find this one hard to put down. I really enjoy the stitch. Now this is a 20 count white Aida that was just cut off from, wow, I can't remember, possibly a stocking or something, but it was an amount that I just had left over, so I think it'll be a bigger margin at the edge than I would normally give, but I just used what I had. One strand I've called for DMC, and right now I've got 2,619 stitches, and that's headed towards 12% finished. So really, this is a lovely stitch for people that would like to try full coverage, but don't think they've got the patience for confetti stitching, a huge project, or something that's going to have a monumental amount of backstitch when you're finished, because there's going to be no backstitch. Now, I also, with Mary of Mary's Stitching Corner, started Cabin in the Woods by Flossabilities on Etsy. Now this is also a pattern that is being done by Sally, well, my two Sallys, of Flossie Sews and Grows and Stitchy Sally, to help celebrate British designers. Now I am using a 20 count charcoal Aida. It is to have a dark background, and I contemplated putting it on a lighter background, but thought, I think part of the effect and moodiness for me was the dark background, and for some reason I can stitch on charcoal DMC, but I can't stitch on many other dark colors. So this was a patch left over from my owl up here. And right now I have a chunk of the cabin. The cabin's not quite finished. A few stars, the moon, and one tree popped in. Now, this is 1,018 stitches, which is 11.34%. In the I Spy Challenge, this is C for Cabin in the Woods, and it is also a stitch with trees, and I was careful. The reason I didn't finish the cabin is I wanted to put the tree in so that when I mentioned that this is a stitch with trees, you could see it was true. So I enjoy this one also. It's not quite as straightforward at times as my butterfly, and I have to have good light, even though I did stitch my owl in the middle of the night. I don't know. It's a little bit trickier than my butterfly, but a very enjoyable stitch. And I'm looking forward to watching the two Sallys and Mary develop this piece as well. Now, I also had another start since we last were together, and it's an Emma Congdon. Every so often, probably in the neighborhood of once every 4 to 6 weeks, I like to have an online stitch with Michael and Melanie of Uplift Stitches. I'm really enjoying to get to know them better. And Melanie recently had a birthday. Not only that, she and her mother went on a marvelous sojourn together, leaving Michael to work at home, where they were going, I believe they were going to Keepsakes. I might be wrong, but they were doing a longish drive, and then on the drive back, they were going to route themselves so they could stop at 2 or 3 other needlework shops, and I can't wait to hear how that trip went. They did put up some photos on Instagram that looked like they were having a lot of fun. Now, we did not start the same pattern, but we both started in Emma Congdon. So mine is called No Rain, No Flowers, and my pattern actually comes, I purchased a magazine from my drugstore in January, and it is one of the cross-stitch magazines from the British area, and what it had was a calendar included with pictures of cross stitches, one for each pair of months, and then at the back of the book was the pattern. Well, it turned out that each of these patterns were Emma Congdon. So I thought, well, we are starting this at the end of March into April. Let's do No Rain, No Flowers. And I know that I normally take the words out of stitches, and this one got folded accidentally, but in this one, these letters are so much fun. Just 2 colors of DMC, and here I am doing, this is a 20 count Aida called Cloud Break that was left over from Caroline's birthday box, or the Advent stitch. It was from one of the Evertote boxes that I got in 2024 and would be just the perfect size for this. So again, an easy stitch for me. It's Aida cloth, and you get to stitch for quite a while with one color, but still have such a pretty picture. And so I'm looking forward to continuing to stitch this. So on this one, I've got 878 stitches for 23%. So the other thing that's nice about that one is that in the grand total of things, it doesn't have so many stitches that when you put in a couple hundred stitches in a day, you go, oh, my percentage jumped up quite a bit, which is different than my next one, because my last work in progress is always By the Shore, my Stitch Is So Beautiful BAP. And this is based on artwork by Kaplan Dorr. And I am stitching it on, oh, this is the white Aida, so that might be where the corner of my white Aida came for my other stitch for Butterfly. So I have been a busy beaver, in that I had 3 weeks to do this stitching, and as such, I managed to actually get up to 73,855 stitches to be at 44.76. So what you're going to notice I did was I focused down here. I decided that my beagle here needed his friend. And then I was like, I've been wrong. This isn't a boy beagle. This is my boy beagle. And he's, once you get closer, let's see if I can do this. In his paw is flowers to give to the little girl beagle. So we could call them Bob and Beatrice. So I did well because this wasn't really in much at all the last time, and I got some more of the path. And now in the last 3 days, what I was doing was getting the canoe in, because in the canoe we're going to have 2 more puppies that don't look like they're beagles. So at this point over here, I'm over halfway across my stitch, and when I back up, there is the look. I'm particularly impressed. Now, I realize that this is based on Kaplan's painting. When I look at this, you can actually see the reflection of the trees, the reflection of the sky. I'm just so impressed with the details that are coming to life in my stitching. And it's interesting that the farther I get into this, the more I notice, because when you're in the midst of stitching a couple hundred stitches, you aren't always aware of what the effect is until you hold it back and go, wow, look what I can see. So I continue to be thrilled with this, and so far am still on track to finish this for Stitch North in October. I will have to do 500 stitches a night, a minimum of 28 days of the month. But that has allowed me a few days in some of the months to, when I go away, not take this with me because I will not fold this up. And yes, I'm doing my own gridding with my mother's polyester thread, and I just clip it as I get to it. And you'll see that I need to put in some more gridding because I got to the edge of my gridding the last time I was stitching. So I'm really, really pleased with this. Now that was the I Spy Challenge Earth Tones, because there's lots of greens and browns and grays encapsulated in that. And I mean, even just the path is clearly earth tones, but I look at the foliage as being earth tones as well. And it's also the I Spy Challenge, something with water, because hey, that lake is water. Now I have another couple shout outs. Cheesecake and Cross Stitch. Michelle has 7 videos. She is so cheerful in her presentation that she makes me smile just to watch her. She dreams of living a simple country life with lots of stitching, sewing her own clothes, and just more simplicity. And I would just love to live next door to her and enjoy sitting outside stitching amongst the wildflowers. Wouldn't that be lovely? Of course, I think I'd have to go to England because I believe that she's across the pond. Tommy Creates has 1 video. She enjoys both counted and stamped cross stitch, and I thought you might find that interesting because there could be some of you who would like to cross stitch but are finding the counting frustrating at times and are not sure what to do about that. And while having my patterns in Pattern Keeper certainly does help me to make fewer errors in my counting, it isn't foolproof. And as such, when you have a stamped piece of fabric, you're just following the colors that are on the fabric. And there are some beautiful stamped fabrics available. Now, Tommy is actually an artist. She's got her master's in art. And I foresee that we have a designer who will soon be showing us something that we might want to stitch. Now, I have already chatted about Jason X Stitches. I'm loving his videos, and on his latest video, he said, look at that. I believe it was on April 6th, which was when I started making this video. You can see my puppy over here. That we'd be halfway to Halloween in this year. And I'm like, well, is that not an invitation to start a Halloween stitch? So when you see me next, there'll be another start. It'll be a Halloween stitch. Now, it turns out that even though I started some things and got to 20 whips, because I had a finish on my wee bee stitching, I've got a spot open so I can start something else. And I'm doing a debate. I had somebody share a really cool Halloween stitch with me the other day and I think I just might try it. But it's not small, so it's more of a medium. Now, I've done very well with the I Spy challenge. The one that I just didn't have in here was Mythical Creature. So I also foresee that I'll have another gnome started for my next video so that I can have a mythical creature and check off that last I Spy challenge in the month of April. Now for my moment for music, I have Valsette by Jean Sibelius. Now Sibelius is a fairly common name, but many people are not entirely sure why. He is actually Finland's most famous composer and noted for actually creating a style that would be considered nationalistic to Finland. And as a matter of fact, the piece Finlandia and his 7 symphonies are what people would find familiar even if they can't put their finger on and connect the dots to the composer. So he does have a number of piano pieces and I find them delightful. Now this Valsette is not one of my elevated performance pieces. It's just a beautiful miniature that encourages students to explore the idea of rubato, which is the stretching and easing of the tempo for expressivity. And of course, Valsette means a little waltz. So I hope you enjoy this rendition of Valsette. And now it is time for me to say goodbye at perhaps one of my longest videos yet, because it was 3 weeks and yes, a mini whip parade. I do hope that you are finding pleasure and ease of tension in your stitching and a sense of community in stitching with your Flosstube friends. I hope that as you watched today that you had floss, needle, and fabric in hand, and that as you made something beautiful, you made yourself happy. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye for now.